So, do you have a student that is struggling with what they should major in? Maybe they have a couple of majors that they're interested in, a couple of fields that they're torn between, or maybe they just have no idea. Well, this is a session that you're going to be thankful that you're listening to. Dana began her career at a university at the age of 21, working with college students to develop leadership and life skills. She earned her Master's of Education in Guidance and Counseling because she was specifically passionate about career counseling. She has an extensive experience working at undergraduate and graduate level universities, in adult and continuing education, as well as serving universities who had secure testing requirements for a computer-based testing corporation. Dana is recognized as a thought leader in San Antonio, serving on numerous advisory boards within the 4th and 10th largest school districts in Texas, as well as higher education institutions championing the power of formal career exploration. She was a guest speaker at the Laura Bush Institute for Women's Health, where she talked with 1,500 college freshman women about how to make informed decisions about their future, as well as a panelist of workforce events. Dana's main mission is to educate students and parents about solid ways to make smart, informed decisions about who they are, what they love, and how their brain works as it relates to careers, all done with humor, balanced insight, and keeping perspective so money isn't wasted on changing majors or students' futures aren't defined by not succeeding in college if that's the right path for them. I am excited and thrilled to have Dana Rita here. Welcome, Dana.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. I'm really honored to be a part of the summit.
Yeah.
I work with students who are 14 all the way through adults to help them determine what makes sense for their lives, but through a holistic career exploration process, which includes looking at their personality as far as it relates to careers, also what they love and like, and then ultimately aptitude testing.
That's great. And I love that because I think it's important for kids to find their passion. And so a lot of times they don't know what that is without going through so many, this type of testing and those kind of, those things. Why don't you tell me a little more about why it's important that students know this, especially with the new House bills that are there, having to choose plans in their high school years, those type of things. We've got to have this all figured out, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think the pressure is like never before, specifically because of endorsements. Students at the end of their 8th grade year select one of 5 different pathways, and which I think is wonderful. I think if you can identify what makes sense for you and what you like and what you're good at, then you can spend those 4 years in high school really studying stuff that interests you, but that you're also good at. And sometimes there's kind of a disconnect because just because you like something doesn't necessarily mean you can do it. And that's really the power of aptitude tests.
Yeah,
I think.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think one thing that is a challenge is that just kind of the time that's spent on helping students figure out what careers even exist and how to make those decisions. Because I take such a holistic approach, I mean, it's a very lengthy process because it's the biggest decision they're going to make in their entire life. And I think the pressure they feel to get it right is really overwhelming their enjoyment of their high school years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I think you're right as far as like starting this process early, because while the students are going in and choosing these endorsements, a lot of times it's, well, you make good grades in math and science, or you make good grades in English, or, you like choir, or you're going to be in this, you like sports, so you're going to go on this track. And, so they're kind of half-heartedly just put into a track based upon what somebody who really doesn't know them very well. I mean, people have to understand that counselors are doing the best they can. They're relying on an 8th grade student who's 13, like you said, 14 maybe, to know which track is going to be the right one for them. And once you're in it, it's very difficult to change because of the requirements. And so then you're kind of narrowed into this track, and it's great if it's your passion, but if it's not, then you're kind of stuck.
Right. I know Money Magazine did a survey about 235 counselors and asked them where they spend their time as far as the career exploration part, not the testing, but just the time that they spend just on career exploration.
Yeah.
And 50% of their time was talking about how to fund higher education because it is so expensive. It's probably one of the biggest barriers for families and students to overcome. Can I even afford to go? The second portion, 40%, was talking about what colleges to go to. And that's fun. That's really an enjoyable conversation. Right. But less than 20% was focused on what are you going to major in? What careers exist? And so I'm really passionate about flipping that conversation. I think what's most important is, number one, for them to know what will be their career. 2, what major aligns with that career, and then 3, what universities have those career pathways. Yeah. And so I think sometimes we're putting the cart before the horse, and because of limitation in time that the counselors have, they aren't really able to go in depth about what careers even exist. I pull from 500 careers when I work with my clients. There are careers that they've never heard of.
Absolutely.
So, that's kind of the fun part of career exploration. It's really opening up their worldview and then learning about all these different aspects of who they are and what are those trends that go through all, the personality, interest, and then ultimately aptitude. The other danger with students picking a major on their interest is that it's all about what they've been exposed to. So if they don't know what they don't know, it's really difficult to make informed decisions. The other part is that interest doesn't even stabilize until they're 25 years old. So they're picking a career based on a snapshot in time.
Yep.
For some clients I work with, they don't have any interest. They don't get any Holland codes on the strong. There's many reasons that can go into that. It can be depression. It can be, a first gen who really doesn't even know any of the info, they're not able to make informed decisions. And that's where I think, I always say a test is a test is a test, but it's the in-depth analysis of all the data. It's understanding and having an in-depth conversation with the student and the parent, because it is a family decision. As much as we say, it's your choice as a young adult, which I 100% believe.
Right.
There's a lot of impact of the family dynamics that go into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell kids all the time, when they're talking about their interest or whatever, is that, if you think back to when you were, 5 or 6 or 7, maybe you played with Barbie dolls or, G.I. Joes or Lego or, farm animals or whatever. And then you're 16 and 17. Now your interests are cars and, social events and all of those things. So you look at the difference in what your interests are as a child versus a teenager. Right. Then you translate that into what it's going to be when you're in college. And I think that's why so many kids end up having more debt because they're staying in college longer, changing that career, those type of things. Or, going back to like the reason things that it's not advantageous to choose a career path, especially one of these that you have to choose going into high school based on your friend or what somebody else tells you.
Right. And, the other part that is critical that I don't think we do enough of is talking about how healthy is that career. Can a student go to school and get out and get a job? I always use broadcast journalism as an example.
Yeah.
It's growing at a negative rate. Our medium for information has changed. I live in San Antonio. When I was here 20 years ago, the same broadcast journalists are on the newscasts that were here when I was there those many years ago. And so that's when it's really, really, really critical about where you go to school.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I want you to eat, and I don't want you to have debt. And so I
Right.
think sometimes that piece is missed. When I talk with groups, I ask them, how many of you have seen ONET, which is just one resource in the
Mm-hmm.
bucket?
Oh yeah.
They've never seen it. They don't know what it is. They don't know how to use it. They don't understand how to research the data.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think those are just additional conversations. I will tell you, some of the students that I've worked with, they changed their career pivot
Mm-hmm.
to select oftentimes, okay, well, I'm not going to go this direction, but I'm going to go this direction, because not only do we look to see if it's, what the Department of Labor says, we go and we look who's advertising right now.
Right.
And that gives them such clarity and perspective. And I think it also helps the family to know, okay, they're not just willy-nilly selecting something, that they're
Right.
actually making very strategic decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because, I see students that come in all the time that say, oh, I want to go into meteorology or I want to
Mm-hmm.
go into psychology. And those are great fields, but
Mm-hmm.
what if you decide not to move on to get that master's? What happens if
Right.
you decide in 4 years that's where it ends? So
Mm-hmm.
understanding a career path and where it goes, and do you really want to stay in school that length of time, and what do you want
Right.
to do? Is huge, and it saves them
Mm-hmm.
a ton of money moving forward through that. So, I mean, I think that's like absolutely great advice. And it is difficult for them. People will say, well, how are these kids at 13, 14, 15, 16 supposed to know what they're
Mm-hmm.
going to do with their lives? And I think that's
Right.
the topic to talk about because
Mm-hmm.
fortunately that goes into so many things because like you said, choosing their career then allows them to choose classes in high school or
Right.
choose that endorsement or to add those activities or camps along the way, which then shows demonstrated interest, which when they're
Absolutely.
applying to college then allows them to say, okay, you're really serious and this is what you want to do. And so by the time you get to that college and that you're starting, you're already immersed in the situation where the school
Mm-hmm.
has a pretty good indication that you're going to be successful in that area versus that you've just randomly gone, oh, well, I have a STEM endorsement, but I really want to go into government and, I've not
Right.
really done a lot of stuff in that field. So,
Yes. I call it the story of seriousness,
mm-hmm,
because, I tell my young adults, with great love,
mm-hmm,
but you're all a dime a dozen, right? I mean,
mm-hmm,
what makes you stand out? And that's the power, I do believe, of endorsements. And I do believe, if they can figure out what their natural gifts are, they may not have
mm-hmm.
it nailed down 100%. I think it's unrealistic. We as adults are still trying to figure it out.
Oh,
Half of
yeah.
the clients I work with are adults.
Yeah.
So, but they feel they have to get it right, especially my young men,
Oh,
because
yeah.
they stereotypically believe I have to be the breadwinner.
Yep.
I jokingly say they can't be the ballerinas. They don't feel that they
Yeah.
have that luxury. And
Yeah.
so they also are going to have 13 different career pathways. They're called lattice kids, where
Mm-hmm.
we picked a path and we went up it. They're not. They're going to go. I say it's a blessing and a curse of us as
Mm-hmm.
parents, giving them so much exposure to
Right.
different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they have a hard time, even with interest. They love everything. So
Mm-hmm.
if you love
Oh, yeah.
everything, how in the world do you make a decision? And I really think that's where the aptitude testing comes into play,
Yeah.
and looking for those trends throughout a comprehensive approach, because there's something so validating when my clients see a career in their personality.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a client last week who their abilities and their interests did not align with their personality. And
Right.
so sometimes it's like, why am I not happy? Why are these not my people? Why am I frustrated? But you don't even know that you picked a field that completely is the opposite end of who you
Right.
are at the core of your being. And so I think when they also see, okay, there's, career pathways that align with my interest, or I can see some continuity, and then they see it come out in the aptitude. It's not just one test. It's not just one
No.
assessment. It's a whole host, not to mention I look at their GPAs. I
Mm-hmm.
want transcripts. I want ACT, SAT scores. And so mental health, I want to know, aptitudes are genetic. So I want to see the parents' backgrounds. I mean, there's just so much that goes into this decision. And that's why it can't happen at a high school unless you have a small private school who that is their number one focus.
Right.
So it's why I'm just so passionate about what I do.
Yeah, I think what you just said, it was really great because, one of my focuses with this summit was to really cover the college admissions process and every part of it in a broad perspective. And so we have everything from the timeline starting as a freshman all the way to empty nest and parents and what they do in those transition to mental health experts that are talking about how that kids translate during that into the financial part to every aspect, and it really all ties together. And I think that that's one of in my field, if I were to say there's a misconception, I would say that I think that's it, that people think, oh, I come in, I pick a college list, and that's it. And they're like, once I get to college, I'll figure it all out, or I'm going to just take basics. And that's just not the way it works anymore. I want to kind of go back to what you were talking about, the aptitudes, because a lot, I know what an aptitude is. You know what an aptitude is because we're in this field. But let's talk about that for those parents that are sitting there going, what is an aptitude? How do you figure that out? What is this aptitude stuff?
So aptitudes have been around forever. I studied them in my master's program. I have my master's is in guidance and counseling. And it's really funny because I realized that is a term and that people not only don't know about, but they don't even know that companies exist to help with that aspect. And it's natural ability. So I give an example. If you were to write your name with your dominant hand and then change the pen to your other hand that's not dominant and try and write your name, it's messy, it's frustrating, it takes you more time, you're agitated by it. And so aptitudes are just things that come naturally to you. Oftentimes we don't even know or pay attention to it, but oftentimes my engineering students, which you have to have a high level of spatial visualization. You're going to go into architect engineering. So often those students have been playing Legos since they were a child. They love Minecraft. But they don't even know the reason they like that. And parents, it's okay that they're gaming is because it comes naturally to them. The other thing is, brainstorming and how your brain functions as far as idea producing is critical. If you're in a field that demands you to have only a new idea every minute, to be innovative, you've got to be a brainstormer. You have to have a bazillion ideas. Invariably, my brainstormers actually don't sleep. So I see that in the intake process that they're not sleeping because they can't turn their brain off. But they don't realize, okay, this really has incredible possibilities for different career paths that demand it, meeting planning, marketing and advertising. So it's just articulating hand-eye coordination, right? If they want to be an anesthesiologist, they better have, or pilot, you have to have good, great, awesome hand-eye coordination. So it's giving language to their natural abilities and helping them to understand how that translates into career fields that need it and reward it.
That's really great. I love that analogy. And so when you're talking about the aptitude testing and you say to a kid, oh, you're going to come in, you're going to do this test. And they think, oh, I'm going to sit down and take which it is, computer generated typically or paper and pen, but they need their math calculator. Or are you going to be giving me this math test and this English test? So why don't you kind of speak to the test a little bit? Because I think, when any kids that I know that take these aptitude tests or take some of these other tests come back and go, wow, this was not what I expected. And this was amazing. And so I think it'd be great for parents to hear, and the students too, a little bit about that.
Well, I always have, I'd say 99.9% of the time, a mother reaches out to me. They really drive the educational journey. And so when I always say, is the young adult interested and willing? They have to be in order to work with me.
Absolutely.
So when I call them and before they start, I kind of talk through the process and I tell them, you know, you have taken tests all of your life because aptitude, it is a test. There are right
Yep.
and wrong answers. You've taken tests your entire life for other people to make judgments about you.
Hmm.
This is the first time you're ever going to take a test that's just for you.
I love that.
And you know, they're like, oh. And now my young men normally aren't jumping up and down saying I want to do it. My girls are. They're a little bit more self-aware. They're the ones that
Right.
are online taking, I always say, what is my spiritual animal test?
Yes.
But my guys, they're not. And they're like, okay, that's fine. And they invariably say they really enjoyed them.
Hmm.
It was much more fun. It's not an ACT. It's not an SAT. You're not reading a passage and bubbling in. They're just little brain games. And I think the name games kind of allows them to find a little bit more enjoyment in it as opposed to a standardized test.
Exactly. Well, and I know that with you that you go into a lot more depth than just aptitudes.
Mhm.
And when they're dealing with the aptitudes, it lets you know, are they like a specialist? Are they a generalist?
Mhm.
There's
Right.
these different categories. So why don't you talk about a little bit of that? Because that ties into not only their careers, but rather they really have the, I guess, the bandwidth or whatever to be able to go on to get that master's degree or that doctorate degree, and do they really want to be that minute?
Right. You know, specialists, it only makes up 7% of the population, and it's the rarest. They typically don't love all the fluff classes.
Mm-hmm.
They want to hyper focus. They want to get in and start studying what they are going to love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes it's a very specialized field that only requires, you know, an associate's degree. Sometimes it means your advanced degrees are going to matter.
Right.
But if you're not in a work environment where people are coming to you and asking you for your opinions and your expertise, you will never be happy.
Right.
And that's something sometimes adults don't realize until they're much older and they come to me
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, gosh, you know, what is it? And I'm like, okay, well, you're in this environment where everyone else are specialists and you're not. And
Right.
they're like, okay, I get it. That makes sense.
Right.
So, you know, just given that language of how do you work in a work environment?
Mm-hmm.
How are you part of the team? What are the wonderful gifts that you're bringing to the table? What organizations and companies and career pathways are really going to reward that? So it's so funny because when I meet with my clients after they test, they all test from home. We meet and we meet for 3 hours. And it's funny because when I say that, sometimes I'll kind of hear a like, well, I don't necessarily hear a sigh, but I know they're thinking, gosh, it's such a long time. But
Right.
it is hilarious. When we get to our break time, they don't want to take a break.
No.
So it just tells you, I mean, they're wanting this information. They're wanting to make informed decisions, but they need someone to help them make those decisions and
Right.
talk through and validate or disprove all that's going on in their heads. That's one thing I tell them. I say, look, this is the room of honesty. I
Right.
can't help you if you don't tell me what's going on in your mind. And oftentimes it's, you know, the balanced conversation between the parents, what they want them to do, and
Mm-hmm.
the young adult who already know what they want to do. And they're telling me through their intake form and through their interest form. There's all these little, I feel like nuggets that they leave for me. And so I think it's so critical to have a very trained professional who is able to mediate that conversation. And sometimes it's drawing things together that they didn't even know existed. I know I had a client once who he wanted to be a gamer.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you know, a big field right now. And
Oh yeah.
a lot of my clients don't draw the connection between gaming and cybersecurity.
Right.
And so, you know, sometimes that's why you need that professional who lives and breathes this every day
Mm-hmm.
and stays up to speed on emerging careers and changes in markets and
Right.
how, you know, different career pathways can merge together. 'Cause sometimes it's not just one, it's tying a couple of things together to make the perfect
Yeah.
career for that young
I love
adult.
I love that, and I think that this is such a valuable thing. I always share personal story about myself, and that when I grew up, my grandmother was a teacher, my grandfather was a superintendent of school. I would like when she would come down, I couldn't wait to grade papers. I'd set up my dolls and try to teach
Mhm.
them and all that. When it came time for college, I didn't know, for whatever reason, I didn't click. Oh, maybe I should be a teacher.
Mhm.
I am also very creative. So I had this idea that, oh, I'm going to go into fashion design, and did, and
Mhm.
hated it. And
Mhm.
so unfortunately it led on to my master's, which I shifted into education. But
Mhm.
if I had had somebody, had gone through this type of testing, and had somebody to say, you know what, you have this creative side, let's use it this way, but this
Mhm.
really is the better path for you. I could have
Mhm.
taken that creative side, still done some amazing classes, learned some amazing things, and incorporated that without wasting the time that I did just taking
Right.
classes. So,
Right.
a lot of kids mix up something that their aptitudes and their interest, and then the things that they just enjoy doing, and how do those all come together? Because back to your gaming, like you said, they don't think about cybersecurity. So they love gaming. So they're like, well,
Mhm.
I just like gaming, but they don't know what that really entails,
Right.
going forward. So I think that, that it's great that you're able to provide all these testing, really show the student who they are and their parents. So
Mhm.
what are some of the biggest things that you face in your practice when you're seeing students? What are some of the biggest challenges?
I think, parental pressure
Hmm.
is huge. And I tell my young adults when, I have a college senior and I have a sophomore in high school.
Right.
And I tell the young adult, first and foremost, you need to thank your parents
Hmm.
because this is an investment in your future.
Right.
They didn't have to do this. They care so much about you and
Right.
wanting you to be successful because there are those students who, they fail math. Math is not their gift and it
Right.
defines their entire future. And so, and parenting is the hardest job. I mean, we really, truly, 100% believe
Absolutely.
we're going to make you the greatest thing or we are going to mess up your life beyond repair.
Hmm.
And so I think, just being cognizant of the parental pressure. The other thing is, the pressure between the students. I tell you, we have a mental health crisis on our hands right now.
We do.
It, like never before. Every counseling conference I go to, it's on a university campus. It's typically
Yep.
taking about 3 months to even get in, and they can only see them about 2 to 3 times. I mean, that's
Mhm.
not even enough time to remember them when they come back again.
Yep.
And and there's a great documentary called The Road to Nowhere. And
Mhm.
I think we are spinning ourselves all up in the competition world.
Yep.
And who is unfortunately paying that price? It's the young adult.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I
No, I was gonna say, I actually have a session where we have a mental health person. I mentioned that a minute ago, but that's speaking to that to some extent in the conference. And I agree. The cheating, the
yeah.
competition, and I've got to get into a school because my friend got into it. All the way to I know of a situation recently where a student was so stressed out about the situation, and another student said, oh, here, take these pills, they'll help you. The student took the bag of pills, never took them, but had them in the backpack, and then somebody else knew he had them that was right below him in class rank and turned him in, and he got busted. And of course, by law, he's now dealing,
Mhm.
he lost his rank, he lost everything. So when we have that kind of competition, which is what's going
Right.
on, that there's all this pressure to make these decisions on
Right.
just what everybody thinks is like the best school or the best this, or I have to
Mhm.
be a doctor, I have to be that, versus what's really right for them. And so
Right.
I think that throughout this conference, people are, who are here, are going to hear from us that while we are all about helping kids get into an Ivy school,
Yeah.
that's what they want, or whatever, but that's not always the best school for a kid. And we're
Right.
open to finding what's best for each student.
Right. And that's, I'm so passionate about that. I think
Mhm.
we define our success as to where the students go to school.
Mhm.
I tell my parents and my clients with great love, I don't care where you're going to school.
Mhm.
What I care about is making sure that you make an informed decision about, is that the right academic environment?
Right.
Oftentimes they don't even know that there's a way to do that.
Right.
I have clients who they want to go to a school so badly that they shift and say, okay, well, they don't have my major, but I'll do this. And
Uh-huh.
this is the rest of your life. This isn't
Exactly.
summer camp. So,
Right.
again, I think we just get so caught up in, trying to keep up that our young adults are paying the price. I brought a documentary with some community partners on anxiety to San Antonio in November. And every single group I ever talk with, I ask the young adults, how many of you guys are stressed?
Right.
And literally 99% of their hands go up. And they're not joking. They're not
No.
being playful. They're very serious about it. And so
Mhm.
they're wanting help. They're wanting someone to guide them. But I think we have to give perspective.
Right.
We're not our SAT, ACT scores, which, by
Mhm.
the way, are, as you know, are directly related to money and
Mhm.
education of the mother.
Yep.
We're not our class ranking.
Mm-mm.
There's so much more than that. And that's really just why I care so much about the young adults I am
Mhm.
so honored to get to work with, is that I hope I give a little bit of perspective. My
Yeah.
tagline is proceed with confidence. And that is my ultimate goal, is that they really walk out knowing, hey, I am great at this,
Right.
or, these 4 things, these 10 things, and have some
Mhm.
time to really spend their summers exploring. We have a great organization here in San Antonio. It's called San Antonio Works,
Uh-huh.
and it pairs up high school students with businesses to do formal internships during the summer,
I
and
love
they
that.
get paid. Yeah, and so I just think, the earlier, I don't like to work with freshmen. I
Mhm.
really want them to be sophomores, because I feel like that freshman year is such a transitional time, and I don't want them to start getting feeling that pressure immediately. I do have some clients that they have already, I mean, they were stressed in the 7th grade. And so
Right.
I think getting the information allows you to plan your work and work your plan
Right.
and spend time. If you're debating between 2 different career pathways, whether it is a career camp or a summer camp or an intern, it just gives you some time so that when you hit that senior year, you actually get to enjoy it.
Right. So, what advice do you have for those parents and those kids that are in 8th grade having to decide about that? What endorsements, those type of
Mhm.
things? Because I mean, I agree. I think there is a certain level of maturity. There's going to be a difference in interest. Aptitudes don't change, but interest, things like that do. So,
Mhm.
they wouldn't want to do this like whole program. And I agree, like until their sophomore, junior age, because
Mhm.
that's going to really help solidify more
Mhm.
for them. But, I know parents are stressed, like, well, what do I pick? And what do we
Mhm.
do? Because we're being required
Right.
to do this in 8th grade.
Mhm. Endorsements, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with them. And by the way, educators are the same way.
Oh, yeah.
They, and I think it's done with great intention. We
Mhm.
want students to finish high school with either a career,
Mhm.
if they don't want to, attend a traditional 4-year institution,
Right.
or if they want to go on, that we're preparing them for what comes next.
Right.
Um, I do work with 7th and 8th graders just to do interest and personality, because it's normed for 7th and 8th and above. Um, I just think that if we don't figure out a way to do more career exploration in that middle school, I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot when they get into high school. I've
Right.
had clients who, they were on a science endorsement in their senior year and they were miserable. And I'm like, why did you pick this endorsement? They hated it. And they
Mhm.
were like, well, because my sister did. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, you're wasting this time that was
Mhm.
supposed to be preparing you. Um, but the time is limited with the counselors, and
Exactly.
where they have to spend their time every day to check the box
Mhm.
for the state requirements. And so I think it's a great initiative, but if we're not doing that front end, I think it's counterproductive.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I have some resources that I use with kids who are younger and helping choose those endorsements. But
Mhm.
it is difficult because there's not that education I wish there was. So I totally
Right.
agree with you. So once a student has kind of chosen their career, and they're like, okay, these are, I've kind of figured this out. I've done my aptitudes. We've
Mhm.
done all this great testing with Dana, and we love it. And we kind of know what direction we're going to go. So what are those next steps?
So all of my clients actually have homework, and they get about 90 pages worth of information. So they have to go back through it, highlight, make notes. As a family, the parents have to go through it. Then I request that all of them do informational interviews with their top ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then I encourage them to do job shadowing with their top two.
Mm-hmm.
So once that occurs, then they can come back. So honestly, it's really fascinating because I will say I very seldom see my high school students again. They get what they need and they move forward. And it's great because I hear from the parents and, that's really nice. So, I think the homework is a really important part of the process. I say, you've come this far. Don't drop that ball now, because there's something so validating when you're in a work environment or you're even spending a half a day with somebody and go, oh, this is so not for me.
Right.
I want to do, maybe pivot a little bit and go, okay, I want to go this direction. It's similar. But it also allows them to talk about what is happening in their field. Things are
Uh-huh.
changing so quickly. So
Right.
it allows them to say, it's not that you're not going to get a job, but, we're going to go more automation. And so you have to be mindful of that. It's
Uh-huh.
a powerful step.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. And one of the things I like what you said about the homework and working with the family on that, because I feel like that so much, or in the past specifically, there's been this like, oh, we're just going to rush through this. And
Right.
really and truly, from the choosing a career through picking your college to writing your essays to doing your interview to
Mhm.
starting your freshman year, understanding who you are, like having that thread run through. I have a program called Uniquely You that I do with students to help them determine what's unique about
Mhm.
them. And it goes this is beyond the career.
Mhm.
This isn't about that particular piece. It's more
Mhm.
about,
Right.
where do your passions lie as you're going to choose your volunteerism, as you're going to choose which activities you want to be.
Mhm.
So that career piece can be pulled into that because that is a part of it. And so I think if parents and
Right.
students could realize early on, let's take a step back and let's know that we're going to put these things in
Mhm.
place. We're going to take our time. We're going to go through these
Right.
assignments. We're going to we live in such an instant society, and everything
Right.
is like this, and it's all social and
Mhm.
mobile and all of those things. And there's a place for that is
Mhm.
great. But sometimes the good old fashioned sitting around the table, just sharing and looking at that and talking about it is vital.
It's so important. And it's what differentiates me from aptitude testing in Dallas or in Houston, because of how much I spend face to face. I took my daughter when she was a sophomore to Dallas for
Right.
aptitude testing. And I saw the weight of the world come off of her shoulders, even though I knew her natural gifts. But one
Yeah.
thing I just felt like it was a talk at us, not a
Mhm.
talk with us.
Right.
And I will tell you, I had a session yesterday that went for 4 hours,
Wow.
and they deserve it.
Hmm.
They want it. So, and I don't know sometimes that they even realize that they want it or
Right.
how much they need it. And the parents need it. I mean, they're stressed just as much, if not more, than the young adult.
Yeah.
And so I think, we're not, like I said earlier, talking about a summer camp. It's a really big decision, but it doesn't have to
Right.
be overwhelming.
Right.
I think that's where, having a person who does it 100% of the time
Right.
and constantly has that background in counseling to help facilitate and guide. It is their decision. I don't pick careers.
Right.
So It's funny because I will sometimes have them say, okay, well, all right. Normally my adults, actually, they're like, well, just tell me what to do.
Yeah,
I'm like, well,
right.
it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I agree with you completely. The earlier they can do it, it just takes this enormous fear and enormous elephant, and
Mhm.
we just bite away
Yeah.
at it, and it's just not so overwhelming.
Yeah, I totally agree. So kind of along this line, what can parents do to eliminate the stress the kids are under in all of this stuff that we've been talking about?
So I think we have to model our behavior. It's funny. I tell this story where I was at a conference in New Orleans. I went to dinner before, and then afterwards, I ran into two separate different couples from the East Coast, and they asked me what I did, and I told them, and they were like, "Oh my gosh!" They both said, "We feel like we were failures because our kid, did not get into a great school."
Yep,
And I said to them, "Gosh, we as parents own all the burden."
we
But
did.
unfortunately, when we feel that way, our children know that they have disappointed us.
Hmm.
They take that on. And so I think we have to be really, really mindful of our language. Um, I always say it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
There's, 4,000, 2-year universities, 4-year universities, not to mention even international schools or universities.
right.
There is a place for every student. But I think we have to be careful to not um, put pressure on them that they're not willing to take on. It is their journey.
Right.
So I often hear parents say, okay, well, they're taking an SAT or ACT prep and they're not happy about it. And so I think we have to listen. We have to listen. Sometimes we're like, okay, they have to volunteer, and they don't want to volunteer. That's not where their heart is. And as you know, when you help students to kind of put together their applications, universities see if they really care about that, or they were checking a box.
Mm-hmm.
So if they, don't like choir, then find something else that they do like, so
Right.
that they're actually enjoying and learning and growing and beginning to kind of mold what their future is going to look like by taking
Right.
ownership of it.
Right.
So I think just, the modeling, and I think we have to help them keep perspective with their peers. I mean,
Mhm.
that's another thing I think that is a big challenge. It's amazing how everybody knows what everyone's class. They know who number one is for
Yep.
class rankings, and a lot of universities now are discouraging high schools from doing class
Right.
rankings
Hmm.
to eliminate some of that stress and competition.
Yeah, exactly. And, they know as soon as the PSAT scores come out, they're on their phones. They know the day that those early decisions are out. And so they're sharing those moments with all of their classmates instead of like being at home and share, I miss the days. We still get the big envelopes in the mail. I had a picture of a student yesterday that sent me, she was holding up her big envelope and had it open that said, "Yay, I got accepted." And she had this big grin on her face. And I love those because the whole like, oh, we can check on a portal and it's there. And then, if you're out in public or whatever, you don't have a way to like, I guess like process that really, so. Well, this has
Mm-hmm.
been like
Right.
amazing. I think that
Right.
what you're doing and helping students understand and pick these majors not only helps them understand themselves better, but it helps them in the long run, like you said, choosing the right colleges, as well as not spending extra money being in school by taking, changing their major in the middle or switching schools. I mean, the biggest derail for any family is for their child to switch majors and change schools because you're going to have a large credit loss there, and you're going to be
Yes.
already, you paid for this and that's just gone. I
Right.
mean, it doesn't translate any other way. So definitely knowing these things in advance saves money. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a what I call short answer section. This is where I get to ask you questions and you get to answer them in 150 words or less, something like that. But our kids do this on their applications all the time. It'll ask them, why our school, or, tell us something about you or something we don't know about you. And they always think, oh, how do I answer that shortly? So that's why I picked this short answer section. So the first question to you is, what is one thing that you wish families knew about, choosing a career, that type of thing?
That there's actually a way to do it without having to throw a dart at a board and hoping you get it right.
That's
formal career exploration.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that it's not, you probably get this all the time. People say, where were you? I didn't know. How did I not know that you were around when I was there? You get that all the time. Like, I didn't know we could do this. So, okay. What is one of the biggest misconceptions?
I know.
What is one of the biggest misconceptions?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that our scores define our success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. We're more than a number. Okay. And then what is one thing?
Absolutely.
What is one actionable thing they can do today that somebody can go, okay, I've heard all this stuff. This is great. And I'm going to go out and do this.
I think finding a career counselor who has a degree and a background, who does aptitude testing. When I speak, I tell people, look, I don't care if you come to me. There's, Dallas, there's Houston, just go somewhere. Make that investment now, because if you make the investment now, I promise you, I believe if young adults willing to truly engage, it's going to have a lifetime of benefits.
Absolutely. Well, this has been wonderful, Dana. I love all this information. And I know some people are saying, okay, but I do want to connect with you. And I know you have some special offers. So I'm going to give you a moment before we end to kind of just share your process, give people information on how they can contact you, those type of things.
Yeah. So what I do different from Dallas and Houston is that all my clients take them at home. So I have clients from California to Montana to New York to Florida. So you can take it at home, and then we do our sessions by Skype.
Right.
So yeah, everybody takes them at home. It's about a 5-hour commitment that's broken up, which is really good for like students who have ADD, ADHD, testing anxiety, by the way, not my favorite thing to do, which is kind of funny that I do what I do. And so it really eliminates that, I'm going to go into a testing center and all that goes into that. Once they finish testing, like I said, we meet for 3 hours or as long as that young adult needs, and just go through everything that is on their mind, who they are, what they're great at, where their struggles are and why that exists, and talk about options for the future. So
I love that. And so how can they contact you? And I think you have a special offer for them, right?
I do. So 25% off, or $25 off of a career package. And it's readerconsulting.com/virtual summit. And it's just for people who are watching this. So
that's great. And I will tell you that on Dana's page, you will find all of the links. You'll find her bio. You'll find how to get to her website, to contact her, as well as to get that special offer. So if you are questioning, you think, oh my gosh, my kid really doesn't know what they're going to do, and you're looking for that, then I definitely encourage you to reach out to her. And this has been amazing, Dana. You've given parents, I think, a lot of great information. They can really, they now know something they probably didn't know about. And the other part of this process and this summit has been to answer those questions, like, what is it that I don't know? And parents say that to me all the time. I don't know what I don't know. So we're trying to give them some of that information about things they don't know. So I think this is one area they probably are not as aware of. They just don't realize that this is a whole process. So anyway, thank you again. It's been wonderful, and I've loved having you.
Right. Yes, thank you.